10 labs and now me in the clinic. So I think this will be really insightful, and we're really glad you took time to do this here.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, guys. So I read through the course section for this past week, and it reminded me of a failed attempt at something that I wanted to share with you.
Thanks.
And I just want to share it because there are lessons to be learned here. So in 2012, my friend and I started Joker LLC. Okay, so it was a very serious attempt at a concept. We had both been down in Austin, and there's a bar there that I think it prices both food and drinks. Like the price it fluctuates. I forget if it was called like Stock Market or Stock Market Bar or something. I'll have to find it. But that got us thinking. So he's in banking. He works at or worked at Think Bank at the time, and I was still at IBM. So we started thinking about what does it look like to have variable price for a bar owner or restaurant owner to have a variable price on an item based on engagement, right? So any sort, right? If it's a touchdown, can that automatically impact the price? And if you bring in a group of 10, could you receive an automatic discount without having to present a printed coupon that says groups of 10 or larger parties? I want to automate the whole thing. So it was a fun concept to think through. Mistake number one was building it right away. Right, so I was really into trying to build this thing. So I found the ESPN API was free at the time, where you could attach or link to a stream from a game. Let's say Vikings Bears or something. Every time the Vikings got a touchdown or a score, we could update a little ticker or something, and I can have that influence the price. So then we started working with Square, the Square API, and Stripe as well to test them both out.
So Square is the
payment system. Yes. Yep. So Stripe had a really good API at the time that would let you kind of tinker around, and you got like 1,000 interactions, just for trial or for free with this thing. So we got it working where every time the Vikings scored a touchdown, it could increment the price. I'll show you it could increment the price of an item in your basket, if you will, like the fries or the burger, whatever it may be, by increments. I think, what do we do? Like 10 cents. Just a trial, right? Is like 10 cents down and up, and then we tried that with different things, and then we thought, okay, now that we have this thing figured out, because people will go to, it was part of initial research that we did, just talking to people at Buffalo Wild Wings. There weren't a lot of families or groups there. It was just random people watching the game, on a Sunday. Mm-hmm. We thought, what does it look like to bring in groups? Bigger tickets, that could lead to bigger sales, and how do we increase throughput on nights that don't have games going on? So that got us building something else. We actually hired a programmer from the cities who was able to help us not only plug into the ESPN API, but then other things too. So we said, okay, how can we, with an app, identify that my name is Ahmed, I'm bringing 5 of my friends in, and that qualifies, how do I see specials, if I qualify, if I bring in 5 others. So we figured that piece out. Okay, if I bring 5 or more guests, then, I start to dock the price by this automatic amount. So that was really cool. We figured it out, and then we started to talk to, we went to Winona, so we thought, okay, college students, the best place to start. What's the nearest one? We went out to Winona, and we talked to all the bar and restaurant owners, and they said, interesting, that's cool. And their first question was, what do I have to manage? It sounds like a lot of work. And I said, well, you'd have to buy, we would present you with the point of sale systems, and then like a dashboard where you could set, all of these, you could tweak all these things, and then you'd be set to go. there's a lot of skepticism. So this is where the issue I'm going to share is, there was a lot of skepticism, and they said, well, it sounds good, but how do you keep the price from falling too low? I'm like, well, yeah, you set that, so you never want to pay, as a customer, I never want to pay more than I would have normally, right, or I can anywhere else. I just want to pay less. So the max that you could ever, that you would set is just the price of the product. If I was going to pay $5 for a burger, I never want to pay $5.50. That kind of maxes out at what you would have paid anyways. But then your incentive is to bring in a group, or to bring in, I don't know, 10 Vikings fans with you and connect that way. Anyway, so it was we hit the big issue. I think there was a decent amount of interest in it, and then we actually sent an email out to Bus Time Media. So we thought, okay, at Buffalo Wild Wings and a couple others at the time, Broadway Pizza I think is using them too. They're already up on the monitors, so you can play quizzes and interact, and I think if you hit a certain point on a quiz, or point range on a quiz, you get something like a free basket of fries or a beer or something like that. As I said, they already have the infrastructure, they already have screens in restaurants, let's work with them. And that's where we had some trouble, because then it's not only like their screens aren't attached to any point of sale, and that wasn't their business. They never wanted to get into point of sale, they just want to be the entertainment. So 2 major lessons learned, which is we got into the identifying the user, and that's why I was really interested when I walked in. You were talking about pricing. There's 2 layers of pricing. We're pricing the products themselves, like the basket of fries or whatever it is, and then the pricing that we would charge the restaurant owner. It's like this licensing and how we could keep the service going. And that was maybe too many layers. We could have started with one and then got to the next. And the other piece was, it got too complicated. We got too ambitious with, because it was fun to us. Like, that's the only reason we started it, is we thought this is a really fun idea. So we went a little too far with it without boiling it down. I think if we had went to a small restaurant owner in Winona and said, we're just starting with the burgers, that's what you do, and if they bring in 5 of their friends, would that be a good thing on a Wednesday night? The answer would be a resounding yes. And if I could charge you less than you're paying whoever's printing out the silly looking poster out front that maybe gets you a couple of people here and there, would that be a good thing? Probably be yes. And I think we could have gotten our first sale that way. But instead of doing that, we kind of went a little too ambitious, and it can do this and that, and it raises too many questions. Like, I don't want to deal with that. It's too much. There's too much tinkering that I would have to do. So that was back when I was more, when we didn't have that whole user experience piece wasn't really a part of our process. We just thought it was a neat idea, knew the technical side, knew some of the finance side, or my friend was kind of in banking, so he could set up the financial structure. So that was that.
So you mentioned about user experience. You said 2 layers of the payment. You basically got 2 different user. One user is the actual customer buy the burger, versus user is really the owner own the restaurant or POS machine, right? So that's a 2 different user. Yeah.
And you're figuring out 2 different price points. Like, what is Bob that's at the restaurant willing to pay for a drink or for a plate, and what is the owner of the restaurant willing to pay for this service, this all-in-one service.
So if you do it again, so which customer you should focus on right now?
The owner.
The owner of the restaurant.
The owner of the restaurant, because then I can convince him or her that they're already paying for it. So you already have it's harder to wrangle. Who said this? It's like a rodeo of cats or something that I heard in a talk once.
Herding cats.
Yep, herding cats. It's harder to gauge or to do the research on people that go to restaurants, because there's so many kinds, and there's high-end restaurants and low-end, and there's college bars versus whatever, and so it's hard to gauge those. But business owners, I think you have, you could maybe link to the mindset of I have expenses, and I would like to increase the number of visitors on Wednesday. How do I do that? So I think I would focus on that. But yeah, there were a lot of things going on there. It got pretty, I don't know, we got too interested in working out a lot of the kinks without actually, building
figuring out what the real problem
figuring out what the real problem is. Yep. So it brings us to the second thing. I'll show you enterprise. What changed everything. Cool. So at the bottom here it says confidential. It's no longer confidential because the product is out. So don't worry about that. This was a cool product. So CoreLogic, I worked at for 2 years, and they're an enterprise. They're a company that handles all of the data and analytics behind real estate. So buying and selling a home, and they're really vertical, right? Because they handle mortgages and banking and the taxes and everything. So a project that really showed me just how powerful this upcoming process is was called Leasing Manager. So Leasing Manager was a concept that started out as people are taking it takes a long time from the time that like leased apartments, or remember that process on maybe the paperwork or the checking or doing the background check, credit check. So it takes it maybe takes 3 or 4 days to, from the time you walk into a leasing office, pick up the 4-page or 5-page, document, fill it out, and then they have to use a third-party service to run your credit and then check your background check. By the time, and then you get the key at the end. So this was kind of neat. And what does it look like if we, because it's called Leasing Manager, for the owner of the units or the community, the rental community, to really have a better, to be able to manage their units better, right? And that all kinds of things. So I never knew half of this stuff. Is if 3 people co-sign on an apartment, right? I've run background checks and credit checks on 3 of them, and they get a combined score, right? And that's what leads to, okay, the rent, this is what your rent is going to be, and they're lower risk because Tom has a really good credit score, and that kind of makes up for for Jim's that's like a 4 or something, whatever the low credit score is.
4. You're a 4.
Your credit score is 4.
4 is that bonus score.
4, I think, is dead.
I think, yeah, you're hardly there. So it made a lot of sense, and I hadn't really thought of that. We think of like me, the customer, I'm just leasing an apartment, and I know this stream, this information is used to deem me, worthy of renting an apartment. But you don't think of like the bigger picture. They're looking at the whole rental community as a portfolio, right? Like this is their investment. They're getting money from 450 renters, but they have to make sure that their apartments are accounted for, and that they if Jim and Joey are off the lease now, they leave, and that leaves the guy with a credit score of 4, to pay the rent. Like that's not that, then you have to kick them all out. So a DNF schedule is the discovery and framing schedule. So this, for an enterprise from scratch, like the concept from scratch, we were given 4 weeks to come up with a product. Like a product that we either validate or invalidate, because that's how much time you had. If at the end of the 4 weeks, we can't move forwards with this, then let's just kill it, and then you've only really spent 4 weeks, but at least you didn't really waste it. You just know it's not something that is viable right now. So you can see the activities on each week, kind of from the strategy of this. Kickoff activity, just get into week 1. demo day, personal goals, persona prioritization, and the technical discoveries. The technical discovery, of course, is like, can we do, can we pull the right information? Can we, do we have what's the technical debt? We call it, is it going to take it 2 years just to figure out how to build it, or can we build any of this from the start? And then, so that's part of discovery, are weeks 1 and 2. Week 2, stakeholder interviews. So this is everyone from a leasing agent to a manager to, everyone that would be involved in leasing an apartment to someone. Exploratory user interviews, where you set up assumptions, you write the script for the user interview, conduct them, and then synthesize them. That one should be bold, because if you just conduct user interviews and you write up your assumptions but you don't do anything with them, you don't aggregate and synthesize them, then you just talk to people, and it's nice, but it won't speak to stakeholders. You can't come back. It's harder for you to go back to a stakeholder on this project and say, we talked to this guy that said he wouldn't spend more than 2 days filling out a leasing application. That's just one guy. But if you say I talked to 5 and the resounding sound bite is I want to spend less time, then it really speaks louder.
So you said script writing. What you're doing for script writing?
Script writing is for the user interview. So you want to be kind of scientific about how you ask people questions.
It's a set of questions specific. Right. Every time you set a question. Okay? You don't want to random just. You
want to remove bias, right? So that was the mistake from the whole thing I was talking about before, that bus time quizzes thing, is we were so biased. Like, this is a great idea. Why can't you see that this is a great idea?
So biased as a designer, as
the owner, as a designer,
okay,
yes.
Okay, gotcha,
Yep.
Gotcha.
Whereas script writing, it gives you time and iteration to say, what is your daily schedule? Think about the last time you leased an apartment, as an example. What was that process like? I haven't biased anything. I'm just asking them what their process was like. And what information were you asked to give the leasing agent, and they can think through it. And then versus, how great was your last time you've leased an apartment? Then it's gets to be biased. And then so persona refinement. So you've developed personas up here in week 1, and I'll talk about what that looks like. And then you refine those, and then you have your user journey. You want to really map out like what from start to finish. What does it mean for the user to go from not having an apartment to having one in a success, and then what a failed attempt looks like. And then problem prioritization and lean hypothesis. I know we don't have too much time, so I want to be mindful. Do you know how much?
You're good.
Okay.
You have 25 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Awesome. And then framing is like, how are we going to build it? So let's synthesize everything we've learned, and then so week 3, the first one, you see show and tell and competitive analysis. Okay, we learned some things. Who's doing that? Like we're not, it's addressing the fact that probably, this isn't an incredibly novel idea. Others may have been down the same track. What are they doing? So there was a company called Rent Cafe, for example, that was trying to do the same thing. What are they doing? It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try it because they are doing it. It's what are they doing right, and what are they missing, and how are they doing? Data collection, solutions, and like how you're going to build the thing. So let's stick to the discovery part to keep it brief. So that's the double diamond thing. I like to show the discovery phase is that first diamond where you go super wide. That's why in a user interview I'm asking what was the last time when was the last time you leased an apartment? What was that like? I don't really need to know. That's going really wide. What are you looking for in an apartment? That really has nothing to do with the process of filling out the application, but it might hint at something that will come into play when I'm pricing this thing, or when I'm, am I making the applicant pay the application fee, or can I maybe offload that to the leasing agent or the community somehow?
So when you're approaching those folks, are you approaching specific cohort of people, college students versus young professionals, or how you select those?
Yep.
I mean, and later on.
Let me, so here, that's a good segue. So I have a hypothesis that, where's this slide I wanted to show? Here we go. This is a really good one to start with. Oh, I'm not showing. Wait, we don't have a whiteboard.
Behind you.
What's it? Oh. We believe, and then blank, and this is the who. Okay, and then has a problem. This is just one way to do it, right? So you think of it as filling in the blank. So we believe so and so, a group of people or one person, it doesn't matter, has a problem doing something, right? We can help. And this is, by this, and we'll know we've won. When the answer. Okay, so that really reduces your strategy down to one sentence, right? If you can fill in the sentence, then you're probably good to start thinking about who you're going to ask the questions to. So we believe Jim has a problem leasing an apartment. And this, you want to keep it short, but leasing an apartment because his credit score is 4. We can help by informing him or her of the process, or making the process easier to get a co-signer, that might help him attain an apartment. And we'll know we've won when, and then you want to have some metric or the KPI or some way to know when you've won, whether that's increasing. This one's really for the stakeholder more than anything, because that's what they're looking for. When a designer comes in, or anyone with an idea comes in front of an investor, otherwise they want to know, okay, I can see that this may be a problem, but how will I know when we've won at this thing? Are sales going up 10%? Are they going 50%? What tick mark do we want to look for, and how do I grade you on solving this problem? So that's kind of a neat place to start. If we jump back, this slide we're looking at here is, okay, so this is, we would take breaks, and this kind of keeps it fun, is take breaks and call these design sessions. So if I gave you a piece of paper and folded it in 4, and I said draw, you'll see the drawings are amazing, maybe. Can I zoom in?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
No.
Yeah, there's a lot
no
of
bodies.
Yeah, there's
headless
no,
people.
be,
We believe headless people have
Yeah.
a problem with having a body.
Finding pants to fit.
We can help by providing them with
He
bodies.
doesn't say like we did this.
Right. Oh, you did something else?
We had this like the
nice.
same thing.
Yep,
Yeah.
the same one.
Or
So,
like-
Same concept, yeah.
so one of
World
them,
of
it might be,
stickers.
so your quadrants would be picture and name, right, fictitious, of course. The demographic, like who he or she is, what their behaviors are, and what their goals and motivations are in each quadrant.
So you want each of your design team or the stakeholders to draw their own thing to make sure they align each other's the vision, or
It doesn't have to align, but like who everyone in the room, and these are like stakeholders and maybe a representative from your programming team or whatever, like a representation of the team to say, I think this is who needs this, who we're building this for, right? So you have
So these would be your customers.
Sarah,
Or
right,
the
and
people that
Jim
have
and
have the
Jenny,
problem.
right? And these got pretty interesting, and they can be funny. Like it's a good team building thing too, because for example, like out of this for leasing manager, the majority of these, if I remember correctly, were a college student or someone out of high school, let's say 18 to 30 something, that's looking for their first apartment. They spend their money on I don't know, like eating out. So this is where we diverge, like go really wide. Like think about who they are. They maybe eat out a lot. They're spending money on I don't know, like an iTunes or Spotify subscription, and they do this, and they don't have a lot of time. Let's say their job is they're working one or two jobs, so they don't have a lot of time to, they probably don't have their bank account app on their phone. They struggle with maybe process-driven things like filling out a leasing application. So things like that, like those are some of the behaviors, and then their goals and motivation. Like I want to deal with the adulting stuff quickly so I can get back to having fun or doing whatever it is they're doing, being a student, etc. So these were neat to look at. So what that does then, you see how this one is kind of patched together. So the dots represent, let's say there's 4 or 5 of those. Each of these was up on the wall, and you have a certain number of stickers, right, or dots. And you kind of your hypothesis as to which one really gets it, like gets to the point. And the one with the most dots, then we kind of patch it together, and we have Mel. Oh, that was so millennial.
Millennial.
See what happened?
Yeah.
And so millennial, age 24, recent college grad, and that's who it is for demographics, and then juggles work and active social life, etc. Has a dog to keep her or him, in this case, company. Uses tech mobile to stay connected. So it's just a wide.
So you blended them all together into
right,
one
into
kind of
one
we're gonna go.
Frankenstein-y person, right?
Okay.
And so.
So just a second. So you say you have 4, 5, 6 people in their room, so their own persona for each. So you ask each of them vote, basically. You think most relevant to the product service you want to deliver, the end product.
The
right?
answer, right? The
Okay.
person we are building this for. So who is this person? And so it's kind of neat when you have the
Combined.
combined one that you can look at and say, okay, that's the hypothesis, right? And then
Very neat. Yeah.
But all of the people that you're blending were similar in that they all are trying to rent an apartment.
Right.
So it
Correct.
has kind of like one cohesive thing,
correct,
and now you're just trying to find out enough detail to.
because we define the problem first.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at the who. So maybe when we're done with that, the picture that sheet
Emerge.
for millennial got put right here. Has a problem. So millennial has a problem renting or leasing an apartment. And then work through it there. So here's the brief explanation. To ensure that the discovery and framing engagement is focused, efficiently targets the highest value persona. The team evaluated various user personas involved and then picked one. So collectively determine the highest priority user would be the applicant, right? Through work, it's still competing, whatever. So we picked somebody to work with. Technical discovery was also a part of this. So at this phase, okay, what if we're to take a paper leasing application and turn it into an app or a website, what does that involve? So this gets technical, but okay, a payment system, embedded app, or the libraries that we would have to use to build this. We started talking about the bigger picture, and this is where we're going really wide in that discovery phase. What does it look like? We know that we need information from your driver's license to run your credit check. Does millennial really want to fill in, take out his or her license and write in the thing, or could he or she just take a picture of it and then we can capture it that way? So we just put it in there, like photo captured, right? And
So there are services you can call in as
we can make it easier by maybe adding this in. And then we knew that Angular 2, which is it's a componentry of flavors, the wrong word, of JavaScript, a package, framework, yeah, that's a framework of JavaScript, which is well adapted. It's data driven, so it seemed like the right one to use. But at the time, most of the programmers on this specific team were Angular 1, kind of the predecessor to this. But it's very different, so we knew that we'd have to train on this new technology. So then we get into week 2, which gets at the user interview. So this is where the question you asked was directed is, how do we pick these people? So we have applicant assumptions, right? And the themes around the assumptions are: mobile makes sense for the application, device usage preferences, values, a good digital experience equals good a live experience, or filling out the application. I'm stressed, I'm distracted, etc. This is about the user, the applicant. Speed, do a lot of the work for me so I don't have to. Personalize the experience. Budget is a decision factor, so if I'm looking at comparing apartments, might take my budget into account. And then be a trusted advisor. So that's one we just came up with as an assumption. We want to be the TurboTax of leasing, right? Because people trust. You put a lot of information in TurboTax, and how do you just trust, because it looks good and professional and it has a nice interface. You just go ahead and plug in your W-2 and your social. So it's kind of neat. So user interviews.
That proved you did the work.
I was there, and I wasn't even taking the picture.
If you were, that'd be impressive.
Yeah. So target demographics, right? So based on all that work that we talked about, target demographics 20 to 39. Applied for a lease less than 3 years ago. Why is that important?
They remember the experience.
Right. Exactly. Owns more than one device, because our assumption is that this is going to be a mobile or a digital experience, and then can participate in in-person rather than remote interviews. Why is that important?
Body language, stuff like that, like just a little bit more natural.
You can capture a lot more digital. I think we've all probably seen this with social media. We project who we want, or the experience we want it to have. If you're on vacation, you're taking the pictures that you should take, rather than, taking a picture of the broken ice machine or whatever. Some people do it. But you capture a lot, like the in between the lines stuff is really important. So in these interviews, this was kind of the room setup, where we gave this one is actually a prototype one. So if you think about the same room, we're asking him or her the questions, kind of the basic questions about how they rented or leased their last apartment. And we recorded the video, or recorded audio and video of these experiences. What you'll see here is we are interviewing, so in this case, who's doing the note-taking? I don't think it matters in this case. But we have 2 interviewers, and then this is the individual that we're interviewing, right? And you do that, you don't want to overwhelm whoever you're bringing in by having more than 2 people, even ganging up on more than 2 other people in the room. But in this case, it was interesting that we had the interest of the stakeholders, the business analysts and the product and project managers wanted to be a part of this experience. So what we did was, used a Zoom meeting or a webcam so that they could be watching from another room, right? They're watching the whole thing, and we have, just a chat window open, or Slack window, I think it was, open, so that if they had questions, they could ask.
feed them.
Like that.
But we
It's
let
not like
them-
when they interrogate suspects. Or
Yep, and they leave, and we left those to the end, because you want as much, like, you have to think of it as a scientific process. So we want to give everyone the same questions and try to keep it as as natural, as possible, and informal as well. So you're not trying to direct the questions. You're really one suggestion would be you mimic the person you're interviewing. And I think this becomes a problem when I'm presenting. So in watching the presentation, I almost take, because it was my first presentation, I'm used to doing the user interviews. So when I was watching the presentation I did for the expert series, I think a lot of times I was mimicking people in the room, and it's a common technique for making people feel at ease. So if I'm interviewing you and I see that the legs up, I might try it, and just inadvertently, you do it like in a way that makes sense. Or if he or she is kind of hunched, I can tell they're stressed. You can kind of try to relax, by doing the opposite. So you kind of sit back and let them feel open to answering questions.
Do you pay them to be interviewed?
Sorry?
Do you pay them to be interviewed?
Yes. So it does work pretty well to incentivize. Anything works. In this case, it was maybe $25 gift card or something.
Okay.
A lot of people will do $10 Amazon gift cards.
Anything works. I'm
For
just
a couple $100, you're getting a lot of valuable
I
data.
respect your time, and I know that
Yeah.
this could be worth whatever is the outcome of this. So in this first round for user interviews, I forget, but I think we had 7 to 10 individuals that we brought in.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're using in-person rather than remote, but do you have selection bias somehow, because from the current, because you are ignore folks, young professional maybe want to move into Rochester, because I'm just asking, I don't know.
That's a very good question, and yes, probably yes. So we try to remove all the bias, but based on where we look for the individual we're interviewing, yes, there were, if I'm asking for participants on Facebook, I've already narrowed it down to people that have a device that can connect to Facebook and are already digital, So yeah, like we tried to remove that as much as possible, is try to go ask what are some of the techniques. We asked people at different, so we picked maybe 4 or 5 different communities, rental communities, small and large. Would you have maybe posted up a flyer or something that said $25 gift card for sharing your experience about leasing, and try to get as
Makes
yeah. And then to do that, as well as before they select, so we got, let's say, 20 participants that were interested. We had them fill out, before we set up a week where we do all of these, we sent out a little questionnaire that said, age range, this, so we can get as many, we can hit the demographics that we want pretty well, and then get the outliers. So we talked to somebody that was 60 something,
Sure.
right? Because it's maybe we're invalidated in this 25 to 30.
Young couples versus
Yeah.
single mom, versus different kind of demographics.
Exactly.
Okay.
Families versus single.
Sure.
So that.
And you are doing this interview as a 1-to-1 interview, 2-to-1 interview.
Right. Because that's another thing for making someone feel comfortable. If I'm sitting there, and never a laptop in the room, because that's another, I'm hiding behind my laptop and I'm typing, I'm distracting them with that. So me doing the interview, it's just me talking to you, and then the next person in the room, sticky pads or the best, or sticky notes are the best way to do it, because they let you do 2 things: is think about the sound bite, like just the line that I want to write about this answer that fits on a sticky note, and next and next and next. So you come out with sound bites rather than people that type, pages versus, the one word answer. Like, nice.
But you also have a script, right? You can listen to
Correct.
video, audio, you transcript through using software, right?
Yep.
You do, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's another thing is we go back and listen to them.
I know other people not only do interviews, also doing like a focus group. What's the pros and cons for those two different approaches?
We did. I was part of a focus group with Google actually. So they had a product like for building cloud applications, and they had a focus group of 8 that would meet once a week for 4 weeks, and they would address different topics each week. I think it gets too hive mind or group think. I think is the word. You start to hear the same things, and it's maybe another one of those things where I'm not comfortable sharing. If I already heard Jim say, I've been a developer for, 30 years and this is what I think. If I've only been a developer for a year, I don't really want to share my input because I instantly feel, less confident in my answer. So I don't know that that's always the best way to do it. It could be, I guess. It depends on what you're trying to get at. But not in this case. So you have, I mentioned the sticky notes. You'll see all the sticky notes here in the bottom. There's different colors for each participant, right? And we start to group those. So that here's where the synthesis comes in. Just look it on 10. Right?
Or
All close? Okay. Then this really kind of wraps up the discovery phase, which is to synthesize what we've heard. Is you have all these sticky notes, all the sound bites and clips from what you've heard is, okay, now let's group those. What are like answers that we hear? And they could be things like, I didn't know, maybe one of the questions was, how did you feel about giving sensitive information like your social, right? We need your social to run your credit and background check. How did you feel about that? Most people said, well, since it was a paper application, I didn't know, if they lost it, then I would have my name and social, and I'm really uneasy about that, right? So those 5 get put together, like uneasy about sharing personal information, that kind of thing. And so out of, let's say, 10 interviews, you come out with these circles or the heat map, if you will. You have larger and smaller groupings, and then that becomes part of your synthesis. You can come out of it with a list, a bulleted list. Let's see if I have it here. This is the journey map. I want to see if I have a listing of these things. Usability testing, same thing here. Here we go. I mean, this is different. Yeah, the usability testing part of this, but it's the validation and invalidation, right? So users validated the clean and easy to use UI was valuable to them. They saw value in step-by-step process, etc. So you can see all those interviews reduced to something I can give to an investor or a stakeholder and say, this is what we learned. That's all they want. Is like they don't really care, they want to know that you did the work, but they really just want to read a list that says, is it going to work or isn't it going to work? Is it worth our time or isn't it? So that's the important takeaway is having findings out of your work. But that was, hopefully some strategy and pricing and experience.
Oh, this is really a lot of question actually. In parallel to the project I'm working on, we have a research project parallel to the work, When you bring this kind of concept to medical professionals, people just get blown away because most people, why are they doing this? It's not like a benchworking, thing, which is that research people doesn't value. I mean, it's
nice, yeah.
people doesn't value the research. It is very rigorous approach. I really think it's important, but I heard this maybe 5-10 years ago when the innovation center bring this out to Mayo, but even at Mayo these days people still struggle to adopt this kind of thinking.